What's going on, everybody? Hope you all are doing well. Tonight we are assembling this here LS6. I am using a tapered ring compressor. I recommend you use a tapered ring compressor anytime you do this because there's no, well, these have no gaps. These are perfect. These work awesome. This is a 5.3 bore and this is a 6.0 bore. Well, this being a overboard 5.7 is neither of those bores, so we got this adjustable boy from Summit, which is just similar tapered ring compressor, but it's got one little gap in it and it's just tightened down with a worm drive pipe clamp. It doesn't work too bad, but it doesn't work as good as those. But those weren't an option for this because of the bore size, so it is what it is. Well, beautiful Icon forged pistons with the rings oriented, the top and bottom rings oriented 180 apart. And I forget exactly the angle that they wanted. With the oil rings, but they're in the proper spot because I followed that recipe to a T, let me tell you. This here is some Lucas Oil assembly lube, and it is thicker than your average maple syrup, but it seems to work really good. It's tacky, it doesn't like run too much, so I can apply the heck out of this thing because we obviously don't want to put her in there dry. So, another worthwhile tip to note is I usually pop the bearing out of here because sometimes when you're tapping it in there, it falls out, and we don't want this guy rattling around on the floor because it's a bearing. So, make sure you got the right end facing the right way. Set your piston in there. Like so. Just with a little bit of it hanging out, so it's got a little reference to where it's going. This here is cylinder 7. All these rods and rod caps are engraved. Good practice. And you might be asking, well, why I'm skipping cylinder 5. Well, I'll get to that in a second. That was a little mishap I had last night, but we'll get through it. So, get that sucker centered in there. Get your handy, trusty bopper. You want to hold this compressor down because it will bounce a little bit if you don't. So just tappy, tappy, tap. Wham, bam, Afghanistan. Pistons in. Now, hold the pin and run. Just kidding. Hold thy pin, rotate thy engine. And that there crank journal is in the way. So, we rotate it out of the way. And then, reach on over yonder, push that rod up there so that the crank holds it for you. Make sure you got the tang in the right spot, especially on these. These are ACL race bearings. And these, I don't know if you can see this, but it's got a taper on this side because this is a scat 4-inch stroke crank, and it's got a tapered radius on the inside of the journal. So that is important that you put the proper bearing in with that crank because otherwise it'll eat itself, and we don't want that to happen. Stick that there bearing in there. Give her a little fooey. Don't mind the shine off my dome. This light up on top is pretty bright. But now shove that down just a little bit. Turn the crank back just a little bit so that journal is pointing upwards so that it's in the best spot for us to torque. Use your fingies. Pull her up top. So now the rod is touching the crank. Our next step is just verify that this bearing's in there properly. Again, the taper is on the right side. Not all bearings will have that, but these do. Give her some lube. You don't want to assemble this thing dry. Gotta match up tang with tang, and if you're a professional, engraved and engraved, so it's even easier to identify. Smush them suckers together. These are ARP rod bolts. There are a couple iterations of these bolts, but these particular ones get torqued to 63 foot-pounds. Click, click, torqued, and you're done. Just kidding. Just kidding. Don't get your panties wadded up. Torque wrench. Kind of want to walk it down evenly. You don't want to just smash one side down, especially on, well, not especially on a machine cap, but on any rod cap. You just don't want to smush them down unevenly. Voila. So, give her a little spin over, make sure she still feels good and smooth. Oh yeah, like butter. So, you don't want to just do this without measuring your clearances. I mean, especially with this, so this crank got turned down 10 thousandths and these bearings are 10 thousandths undersized. So to make sure everything was in check, you got a mic with a micrometer, each of those journals, each of those bearing journals, measure the size of it, use a dial bore gauge, zero it, and then check your clearances with that. And so after all your clearances are checked, which they are, all the rods came out really nice. The mains were a little iffy, but reason being, two of these mains in this block had spun. So I expected that, and they're in acceptable range. So we good. Also, worth noting, depending on the clearances you set, that dictates what oil viscosity you run. And so that's important to note. If you Google bearing clearance to oil viscosity chart, you'll get a chart, and that's that. Oh, and so the reason why we skipped hole 5. Not my finest moment, but I'll show you anyways. So during last night's ring gap madness, all was going well until on this bottom ring, there's a difference between these top rings and bottom rings. These bottom rings especially have a little ledge on them. I don't know if you can see that, I hope you can. And they've also got a little indent, and that's to be indexed up. So the top rings are made of a different material. I don't know exactly what, it's on the sheet, but I don't care, and neither do you. So, what I did last night, which, again, not my finest moment. So when you set the ring end gap, you got to set the ring in each cylinder that's going to live in for its life. Square it up with a piston, and then stick a feeler gauge in between there. Well, when I was doing that, I slipped and ground a little of the outside of the ring off, and that's not ideal. That is gonna friggin' smoke, and we can't have a new engine smoking or huffing oil and burning oil. So that's not ideal, and that bent me out of shape a little bit, especially because these were special order pistons, and now I have special order rings because the company that makes these, UEM, they don't sell to us peasants. They like to sell to, you know, professional distributors or whatnot. So I had to go back. I punched in the part number everywhere I could, Google Summit, blah blah, didn't come up with anything. So back to the machine shop I went, and I ordered a set of rings. I really only need one bottom ring, but it is what it is. So that is just, hopefully you can see that. But that is not ideal, because that will leak cylinder pressure into the crankcase, and then when it goes back up, it'll suck a bunch of oil up, and then it'll smoke. And that's not what somebody wants when they paid to have their engine rebuilt. I mean, granted, this came in because it had low oil pressure and 2-spun main bearings, but they don't want it coming back smoking either. So, I'll probably quit rambling and let you all get on with your evening. I hope I taught you something, any valuable tips or whatnot, but have a good night. Thanks for watching.